came up with the me-bounds thing, y'all ate that up. Because rebounds, me-bounds, rebounds, key-bounds, T-bounds, C-bounds, anything that comes off that board, it's mine. It's mine.
Whoever came up with the me-bounce thing, they absolutely nailed it. Because when it comes to rebounds, Angel Reese has built her entire identity around owning the boards. But here's the thing. Demanding a complete roster overhaul, publicly...
Angel Reese plans on remaining with the Chicago Sky after Rocky in the 2025. You may be like, Rocky, question mark? Yeah, you don't remember? She threw all of her teammates under the bus and then ran the bus over them. In that interview that came out, I think it was the Chicago Sun-Times. And her teammates, nah, they wasn't having it.
Trashing your teammates in the media and then skipping critical games to sell sneakers? That strategy just spectacularly backfired. Angel Reese is learning the hardest lesson of her professional career. The Chicago Sky front office doesn't value her brand nearly as much as she thought they did. And what they just did, it's the most brutal wake-up call she could have ever received. Breaking news just...
She may not want to come back, or maybe she's decided I want to come back, but do the Chicago Sky actually want her back?
Dropped, and it's sending shockwaves through the WNBA. Angel Reese has announced she plans to remain with the Chicago Sky after what can only be described as an absolute disaster of a 2025 season. Now, you might be thinking, wait, what happened? Let me take you back. Reese threw every single one of her teammates under the bus in a now infamous interview with the Chicago Sun-Times. And then, just for good measure, she backed that bus up and ran them over again. Her teammates? They weren't having any of it. The franchise just sent the most undeniable, ice-cold message imaginable by naming Kamilla Cardoso as their Player of the Year. This isn't just an award. This is the ultimate reality check for someone who genuinely believed she was untouchable. What this move reveals about Reese's true value to the organization is staggering, and it's becoming crystal clear.
So you see this right here. Kamilla Cardoso was named the Magellan Player of the Year. Chicago Sky. So she was named the Player of the Year right here for the Chicago Sky. Right? 15 times Chicago Sky Player of the Game. All right? 6 times Chicago Sky Player of the Week. 2-time Chicago Sky Player of the Month. I love this particular statistic. 40 games played. Woo! A lot can be taken from the 40 games played statistic, right? Because let's be honest, here's Angel. 30 games played.
That her future in Chicago might be way shorter than anyone expected. The Barbie brand is hitting a concrete wall of professional reality. She might want to come back, sure. But here's the real question that's tearing through WNBA circles right now. Does the Chicago Sky actually want her back? Because after everything that's happened, after all the chaos, all the drama, all the public humiliation, this situation is looking extremely spooky in Chicago. And for once, the drama isn't about a missed layup or another.
It's very possible the Chicago Sky front office was questioning the injury themselves. Would they admit that? Of course, never. Well, Rhodes, are you saying that Angel wasn't hurt? No. I'm just saying maybe they gave it the fuzzy eyeball just a little bit. In light of the fact that the team was bad, second year in a row, precedent from the rookie year and unrivaled of just stopping, not playing anymore. And then it happens yet again.
Another technical foul. The Chicago Sky finally stopped playing nice. They stopped pretending. They decided to tell the entire basketball world exactly who they value, and they named Kamilla Cardoso their Player of the Year. Let that sink in for just a second. While Angel Reese was busy building her personal brand, calling herself the Barbie, posting on social media, cutting endorsement deals, the Sky looked at actual production on the court and decided Cardoso was the real deal. We're talking about 40 games played. 15 times named player of the
Some of
game.
it was warranted. She did quit on them. She did refuse to go in games. Hey, I'm just saying. She just kind of played them when she said, oh, I guess I got to go back because I'm under contract. Like, she don't want to be there.
6 times player of the week, 2 times player of the month. Cardoso showed up every single day, did her job with excellence, and never once felt the need to broadcast every internal thought to the media like it was some kind of reality television show. And you know what the most brutal statistic is? 40 games played compared to Angel Reese's 30. That difference? That's everything. That's dedication. That's reliability. That's what professional basketball actually looks like. The timing of this announcement is just chef's kiss perfect. It came right after Angel Reese decided to go on what can only be described as a disastrous press tour with the Chicago Tribune, where she explained in painstaking detail exactly why her teammates simply aren't good enough for her. She literally told reporters, not in private, not behind closed doors, but publicly, that getting good players and great players was absolutely non-negotiable for her future with the team. Imagine being in that locker room. For a second, you're a professional athlete. You've put in years, maybe your entire life, grinding in this league, sacrificing everything for the game. And then a player who hasn't even mastered a consistent jump shot, yet is standing there telling the entire world that you're not enough, that the roster needs a complete overhaul, that she needs better teammates to succeed. The disrespect is absolutely off the charts. And here's where it gets really interesting. It's very possible the Chicago Sky front office was quietly questioning the injury situation themselves. Would they ever admit that publicly? Of course not. Never. But let me just say this. Maybe they gave it the fuzzy eyeball just a little bit, especially considering the team was struggling badly. This is the second year in a row, first during her rookie season, then again with Unrivaled, where Reese just stopped playing. The pattern is becoming impossible to ignore. And then it happened yet again this season. She wasn't subtle about any of this either. She was about as subtle as a sledgehammer to the face. Reese claimed she absolutely would not settle for the same we did this year, and essentially positioned herself as the shadow general manager of the franchise, boldly declaring she would personally help attract top talent to Chicago. The ego required to say something like that out loud is honestly impressive in the worst possible way. Look, it's one thing to want to win. Every competitor wants to win. But it's an entirely different thing to publicly tell your coworkers that they're the reason you're losing while you're simultaneously leading the entire league in turnovers. She directly attacked the quality of her current teammates in the most public forum possible, sending an unmistakable message to every single player in that locker room that she considers them inadequate, not good enough, replacements waiting to happen. And let's talk about the disrespect toward the veterans, because this is where things got truly ugly. Courtney Vandersloot is an absolute legend in this league. She's a 2-time champion. She's a 5-time All-Star. She knows exactly what it takes to win at the highest level. And Angel Reese had the audacity, the absolute nerve, to say publicly that the team couldn't rely on Courtney because of her age and reliability issues. Vandersloot actually had to come out and defend herself in the media, reminding everyone that her age is absolutely not a factor and that she's coming back better than ever. When you have veterans firing back at you through the press, you haven't just lost the locker room. You've set it on fire and watched it burn to the ground. Here's what makes this even worse. The front office had already bent over backwards trying to help Reese succeed. They traded for Ariel Atkins specifically to give her exactly the kind of veteran presence she claimed she desperately wanted. They gave up valuable draft picks. They made significant roster moves with Reese's development as the primary focus. And how did she repay them? By publicly complaining that their efforts still weren't good enough. The organization invested heavily in her vision, and she thanked them by telling the world it was still inadequate. That Vandersloot's response perfectly illustrated the difference between real leadership and entitled demands. She defended not just herself, but the entire roster's work ethic without ever directly naming Reese. Other veterans around the league watched this disaster unfold and started seriously questioning what Reese actually understands about being a leader versus just being a star player who wants better individual statistics. Here's the brutal reality. How many players across the league are going to listen to what Angel Reese said about Courtney Vandersloot and think, yeah, I definitely want to play with that person? Most players aren't exactly lining up to join a team where their supposed star has zero problem throwing them completely under the bus with just 3 games remaining in the season. Reese essentially broadcast to the entire WNBA that her teammates weren't good enough to help her succeed. Every player heard that message loud and clear. It created this toxic environment where players were constantly questioning whether their supposed franchise centerpiece actually wanted to play with them or just wanted them all replaced with better options. The unity that championship teams absolutely require became impossible to build. The foundation cracked beyond repair. Then there's the disappearing act. And this is where things get truly bizarre. While the Sky were desperately fighting for their playoff lives, Angel Reese became a professional ghost. Her injury status became more mysterious than a classified state secret. One day, it's supposedly a back injury. The next day, she's listed as day-to-day for weeks on end without any real medical updates or concrete details. Coaches couldn't plan proper rotations. Teammates had absolutely no idea who would even be available for games. The entire situation created organizational chaos that rippled through every single practice session and game preparation. The back injury excuse started completely falling apart when people noticed what Reese was actually doing during her mysterious absences. She traveled all the way to Indiana, to promote her Reebok sneakers instead of supporting her team from the bench during critical games. She was dropping social media lines about taking over her rival's backyard while her actual teammates were getting absolutely blown out back home in Chicago. She actively hyped up her shoe release on Instagram and Twitter like it was the biggest event of the entire year, completely ignoring the fact that her team was in a devastating tailspin. Fans started calling her the Vanishing Barbie because she consistently disappeared whenever genuine accountability showed up. The lack of transparency made everything exponentially worse. Other teams around the league were giving clear, honest injury updates and realistic recovery timelines. Chicago just kept robotically saying day-to-day like they were protecting nuclear launch codes. It was embarrassing for everyone involved. Her technical fouls told an even darker story about her mental state and lack of discipline. Reese racked up 8 technical fouls during the season, which earned her an automatic suspension under league rules. The final technical came when she struck Aaliyah Edwards directly in the head while aggressively battling for a rebound. The league didn't hesitate for even a second to enforce the mandatory penalty. The suspension happened right before an absolutely crucial game against the Indiana Fever, the exact matchup that everyone in the basketball world wanted to see. Reese's complete lack of emotional control cost her team when they needed her presence most desperately. But the Sky organization had to take even more drastic action. They suspended Reese for conduct detrimental to the team based specifically on statements she made during league-mandated media availability. The team handled everything internally as much as possible, but that official label said absolutely everything that needed to be said. Reese had crossed professional lines that organizations simply cannot tolerate. The half-game suspension honestly felt like an incredibly weak response that showed the Sky were painfully caught between genuinely disciplining their problem player and desperately needing her for ticket sales and revenue to... Here's the part that really exposed Reese's actual impact on winning basketball. The Sky legitimately played better without her on the floor. The offense moved faster. Possessions looked dramatically less chaotic. The team didn't seem constantly weighed down by a player who demanded touches and then immediately turned the ball over. Reese led the entire league in turnovers despite missing significant portions of the season, 101 turnovers in just 26 games. That's genuinely a statistic for the history books, just not the kind anyone wants next to their name. 20% of the time, Angel Reese gets her shot blocked inside 9 feet. Critics aren't pulling punches anymore. They're saying she's absolutely terrible when it comes to efficiency. Teammates started seriously questioning where Reese's priorities actually were. She demanded massive roster changes while being strategically unavailable herself. Veterans who had given absolutely everything to build winning cultures watched Reese consistently prioritize brand-building activities over team success. The contrast became impossible to ignore. She wanted dramatically better players, but refused to consistently play alongside the ones they already had. The players' only meeting that teammates planned to directly address Reese's public comments never should have been necessary in a functional professional organization. Rachel Bannum perfectly captured the exhaustion everyone felt when she said, "I think I just don't really care. I'm so over all this." That's a veteran player openly admitting she was completely tired of the constant, never-ending drama. Ariel Atkins, literally the player they traded valuable assets for specifically to help Reese, had to acknowledge the situation by saying, "We are aware of it. We are addressing it." Even head coach Tyler Marsh called handling Reese's comments a top-down organizational decision. The locker room divided immediately and completely. Meanwhile, while Chicago was absolutely drowning in drama, Indiana was showing the entire league what real transformation actually looks like. Their star player handled personal setbacks with complete transparency, never creating mystery around availability. She traveled with the team even when unable to play, sat on the bench cheering teammates, stayed engaged with every possession. She constantly praised teammates, lifted them up in interviews instead of tearing them down. The chemistry built in Indiana became absolutely legendary. They went from lottery team to legitimate playoff contender because their star understood that individual success means nothing without team success. Compare that to Chicago, where the star actively refuses to play down the stretch because she's trying to force her way out. Here's the kicker. Who's going to want to trade for that? Who wants a player who publicly insults her roster, misses games for brand deals, leads the league in turnovers, and demands a leap of faith from free agents? Reese's comments didn't just criticize the roster, they poisoned the well for the entire future of the franchise. The Sky's decision to name Camila Cardoso as Player of the Year is the ultimate statement. The franchise is admitting their so-called star isn't actually their best or most valued player. They chose the player who showed up every single day over the one who created constant drama and disappeared when it mattered most. Cardoso earned respect through consistency and professionalism. Reese lost hers through entitlement and ego. Chicago has clearly seen enough. Being a Barbie isn't enough to carry a franchise when your efficiency is at the bottom of the league and your leadership is completely non-existent.